He's close to those who have been broken in some way. And then he says he saves those who are crushed in spirit. And some of you have been there, and I don't know about you, but sometimes those electronic things you buy, they might last for 2 or 3 years and they kind of break. And what do you do with broken stuff? Well, you can either fix it but if something's broken, it often gets discarded. And I don't want any of us to be in that category of feeling that we are of no value and that we've been discarded by other people or by God. Okay? And I believe God can bring healing and restoration. On the drive to church this morning, Janine reminded me of a story of a Christian lecturer from Whitmore College in the United States. His name is Jerry Sitzer, and he was involved in a car accident, isolated accident, where his wife passed away, his mother passed away, his daughter passed away, and it was an hour before the ambulance arrived, and he watched all 3 of them die, but his 2 daughters survived. And he's written a book, and this occurred 20 years ago, and he's written a book on grief and loss. And so I got here this morning and I looked up Amazon for his book, and I looked at the reviews down below, and review after review after review said, you've got to buy this book if you've ever been through grief and loss. And each person said, I lost my daughter, I lost my son. And review after review saying, we need to understand how to get through our grief and loss so it doesn't destroy us. And we've obviously got a choice, haven't we? We've got a choice to allow God's grace to transform us from our brokenness. And look, come on. Brokenness can come from all sorts of things. Divorce, illness, from a loss of a loved one. It can come from love being one-sided in a relationship. It can come from, you can lose your job and you feel rejected or broken, or maybe you lost your dream, that dream that you had, and it ain't happening the way you want it to do. A wounded spirit, someone you love rejects you, or perhaps someone you love moved interstate. That can be a difficult loss. And although the circumstances are not important, it's what we do with those circumstances that will determine the life that we're going to live. And come on, I want to be honest with you. I did a funeral just a couple of weeks ago, and I stood there before everyone arrived, and so this was Dad, the dad of a family. And I'd been there 15 years before, and I found it hard to find a location in the cemetery, but I found it, and I'm just sitting there looking, and I thought of the incredible pain. And we've all had a taste of it. We may not experience what the author of the book called Grace Design by Jerry, we may not experience that, and okay, we don't. But we all have a taste of loss, don't we? There are various tastes of loss that we experience. And I remember sitting there looking at it, and I'm thinking the family's about to come, it's going to be unbearable pain for them, and it was. And for some people, and I know one particular person came, they feel as if God has abandoned them. They can go through that experience. And there can also be, in our brokenness, a level of shame that we can't get over something that's controlled us. And sometimes we struggle just to get out of bed when we're going through an experience. Can anyone identify with what I'm saying? And there's this numbness. And we ask the question, can my soul be restored after such a loss? When circumstances tell me it can't, and I want to trust God is with me, but my circumstance appears to be too big, that's the topic we want to look at today. Is that okay? Yeah. Because sometimes there's just a blockage in our life, and I'm believing today that you're going to start a brand new journey by the power of the Spirit of God. We're going to pray for people at the end. We can do it in your seat. We can come forward. But I've asked God for something to happen today in this place. Okay? Because there's something that happens when we get stuck in life. And we're telling the same story when we were stuck way back then and we haven't been healed. Or there's something broken and it's hidden. I want to tell you a story. This is a true story. Okay? It's horrible, it's ugly, it's smelly. Okay? In our house, we have a sewer pipe that is... No sewer pipes run down one side of the house. That's true? 3 foot down into the ground. But we're on a bit of a hill and the roadway is down there. So our sewer pipe is 3 foot down. It goes like this and it drops down at an angle and then meets the road again and drops down there. And a few years ago, my daughter was telling me she's showering. And they use too much water. All my daughters do. And run out of hot water. And she says, Dad, it really smells in this bathroom. And I look down at the floor and hello, everything's backing up. Everyone had that experience? All your pipes start to back up. Okay. And so I thought, cheapskate me, I go and hire one of those electric snake thingies, and I put the pipe down and off, it goes down, and I clear it, and you can hear it go. So all the toilet stuff is sitting there, the shower stuff, everything, the washing machine. Lovely story, isn't it? Okay, and about a month later, guess what? It happens again. And so I go and hire the thing again, I pour caustic soda down there, I'm doing all sorts of stuff, and it goes, and I get the snake, and the snake's cost me about $90 to hire, and my wife says to me, why don't you get a proper person who knows what they're doing? Okay, I'll get a proper person who knows what they're doing. So I hire a plumber, $350, and he brings his smart electric snake with a camera in it. We're looking at poo. Anyways, and it really stunk. The neighbours were moving interstate, the house was really smelly, it's poured all over the grass and everything. But it's hidden. The brokenness is hidden, you see. And it's spilling out, and everyone is affected by it, right? Right? And so he gets his fancy plumbing stuff. And he says, I found it. It's way down near the road. And he goes, and he goes, and it all gets sucked away. $350. 1 month later, it's backing up again. And so your pastor gets a shovel and goes down to the road. I phoned the council person. Is this on your side or on my side? And I like council, I said, your side. Okay, thank you very much. So I dig this hole, and it's about that wide, about that long. And I'm digging, and I find the pipe down there. And what's happened is, doesn't matter how many times you send the snake down there, it just pops a hole through this blockage. And it gets down, but there's a complete blockage down there. So I'm down there, and I think, I'm not a plumber, but I get a hacksaw. And I can see the white pipe is all cracked because roots have got in, and it's completely clogged. Poo. Toilet paper. Hair. Don't even go there. Okay. And I want to tell you, I got rid of that blockage, and it was about this big, and it was like a big sucker, like a big double-sized football. And guess what? I was soaked in it. I covered myself in Pino clean and everything to get myself up. I want to tell you something. We can add a whole lot of little fixtures to try and fix stuff, but it keeps spewing out that there. And when stuff is broken and it's hidden, only God can bring some healing in those circumstances, right? Because it's so hidden and it stays there. And it's been doing it for years. I didn't realise that pipe had been cracked for years and years and years, and it just kept building up. So today I want to talk about how do we get past something that has been in our life for so long, a brokenness, a loss, and if it's still painful, how can we get healing from God, and how can we get hope? from God again. I don't want to be stuck in my brokenness. No. True. Do you want to be stuck in your brokenness? No. Okay. So I want to just share a few things with you this morning, and then we're going to pray. Number one, the very first thing, I think it's a biblical thing, is to weep well. Okay? Now grief is something that, it's not a feeling, but it's also a feeling. It's an act, but it also includes our feelings. When hearts are broken, we weep and we cry. Is that true? And when we weep, it can be a little bit scary for us and the people around us, because we're very vulnerable when we weep. And a lot of Aussie blokes don't do it, do they? Because Aussie blokes don't want to be vulnerable. Yeah, mate. Okay? And when we weep, we also feel fatigued. I always feel that way after we do a funeral. I'm always fatigued. And sometimes we don't weep, we avoid it, and we try to make an excuse for it to try and keep away from it. But Scripture does not take a negative view on weeping. God doesn't say, come on, cheer up. God doesn't say, stop feeling sorry for yourself, get up. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, come on, things could be worse. God doesn't say that. Stop being sad, you're awesome. Okay. But a lot of people complain in the middle of their loss. They feel as if God is absent. Okay? And they feel as if God has failed to notice their suffering. Now in your notes, Psalm 56 verse 8 says this. I love it. God stores our tears in his bottle. It's a beautiful phrase. In the NIV it says, record my lament, list my tears on your scroll. Are they not in your record? The New Living Version says, put my tears in your bottle. And when it uses the word bottle, it's talking about a skin bottle. Okay? Are they not in your book? And that phrase, record my lament, it's built on a Hebrew word called nod and nodad, means wandering in distress. And whenever you go through a loss of any sort, you often just wander, even if it's in your mind, you wander in your distress. You're going from this war, this circumstance, to this. And he says, God, I'm just wandering in my distress. Are you there? Are you counting my tears? And God says, yes. Every tear that you cry, I place it in a bottle. Now, it's a picture. God doesn't have little bottles. It's a picture that he knows what you're going through. Okay? It's a picture. You know, my dad was in World War II and they didn't talk about it. What they did was they got a box out, this mystical box. They stuffed all the things that they saw in the war. They stuffed it in the box, put a lid, and shoved it under the bed and never spoke of it again. They stuffed it down. And sometimes that doesn't work. Other times it does. I was at Hillcrest Christian College and there was a young guy who just came back from the Iraq War, an Australian guy, and he didn't stuff it down. In fact, he took drugs on and alcohol, beat up his family until he had an encounter with Christ. And he had to deal with all this post-traumatic stress syndrome. So what I'm saying today is we can weep. And God counts our tears. Put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? In dry climates, you have to be careful with the fluids. You have to keep the fluids and they've got to be available when they're needed. And this verse has a bit of a wordplay going on. Tears placed in a bottle. Tears counted in the book of remembrance. God remembers every tear you shed over every circumstance you're in. How many people are glad of that? Yeah. From a distance, God is watching. No, he's not from a distance. He's right beside you. Amen. And he's counting your tears, your emotions. He's beside you. Okay? Get lost. Your song's wrong. Okay? At a distance, he's right with me in my sorrow. The Bible says that even Jesus wept in the garden. We have a God who weeps with us. Psalm 22. You read it and you feel as if God has abandoned you, but right at the end of Psalm 22 it says, our feelings, our emotions are not abandoned by God. Powerful, powerful Psalm 22. And even when Lazarus was dead, in the Gospel of John, the Bible tells us that Jesus wept openly in front of people, and people even noticed. So we've got to weep well. Everyone say weep well.
Weep well.
It's not